Welcome back to 8 Cubes. I'm KMBest. He's Lamby Series. We talk about the 8 most important topics in Marvel Snap, and this week we'll be starting with the new card coming out on Tuesday, the Fallen One, 5 cost, 5 power on reveal. Set your energy to the power of this card. That is your maximum energy. So if you play him at 7 power, well, you're going to have 8 energy going into turn 6. Why 8? Because it doesn't cap your max energy. You are still gaining 1 maximum energy per turn because that's what the rules of the game are. So keep in mind that whatever it sets you to, the next turn you will have 1 more unless for some reason you have played a Havoc. Lamby, what do you see as the future of the Fallen One?
Okay, so first things first, this card with this text can never be costing less than 5. Let's just, I'm gonna leave it there first because you just don't want 2 extra turns of just doing Agamotto things without playing the Agamotto in your deck. Like it's a powerful card. Okay, so it's a powerful card. Obviously you are trying to buff this and then play this on 5, and then you get some like weaken turn 6 of sorts, right? Like an extra mana on turn 6 to do broken stuff. I think honestly this card is. I mentioned Wiccan strictly because I think Wiccan is still likely the better card, because Wiccan is easier to build a deck around, right? Just need to play cards on curve, which is what you want to do anyway. This one you kind of need to buff it specifically, right? And there are obviously good buff cards in the game, and we've seen them over the last month for sure. It's just that I feel like you are committing to playing once again, the Wiccan reference, Wiccan 4/7, this thing 5/5 without buff. With buff, maybe 5/7, but like, or 5/8 or whatever. But like at the end of the day, you're committing to playing a very like meh card on turn 5 so that your turn 6 is supposedly explosive, right? So playing this like not fantastic turn 5 card with like average stats for a 5 cost card after the buff, by the way, to give you a decent turn 6 might not be worth it. You know, it's like you really need to invest in this to make your turn 6 good. But what if we just play good cards all the way and never invest in this to make us turn 6 slightly better? That's where my thoughts are at right now.
I think the comp I want to make for this card is Sarah with a lower floor and a higher ceiling, where this is a card that, let's say you play it at 5/8, right? You go into the next turn 5/9. Okay. That's about as much energy as a Sarah would usually give you. Like a Sarah is normally going to discount maybe 3 or 4 total cards. That extra energy, like I think that kind of thing would be a reasonable approach to playing this card. The issue I have is that I think this card suffers a lot from the nerfs to Mr. Fantastic First Steps and Surge. And while the Surge one still leaves it intact, I'm not sure the Mr. Fantastic First Steps one does, because both of those are really power amplifiers in a different way than just a flat buff would be. Because, okay, you Surge this, you play it at 4/6, that's just Wiccan. That's just Wiccan. You have a turn 5, 7 energy, turn 6, 8 energy. It's just Wiccan, right? And the same sort of goes for Mr. Fantastic, where it's like, okay, whatever Mr. Fantastic hits on this guy, you're happy. You're putting it to 5/7, you're putting it to 4/5. All of those are cool with you, right? So when you're not surging it, you're doing something good in your hand with the Mr. Fantastic, who now has less turns to hit this guy and is a worse card compared to his peers. And so I was very high on this when I was able to play with normal Mr. Fantastic and normal Surge, and then look ahead and say, I think I can do cool stuff with the Fallen One in this shell. That shell is so much worse now that I don't necessarily know that it actually makes as much sense to be a deck like that. What it does have an advantages over Sarah are a lack of vulnerability to Mobius, which I think is legitimately good. If you're going to be cheating energy, not being able to get scammed out of your cheating energy is kind of awesome. That is actually really good. And the other thing that it has over Sarah is that it's usually going to be a little bit of a bigger body because it's focused on these buffs in that way. And I think this is also kind of important. It's not capped on usefulness the way a Sarah is. So, for example, the other utility that this card has is you play it with Symbiote Spider-Man and you get 13 energy. And that kind of like high ceiling garbage, you can't do that with a Sarah. And even if that's not necessarily good, if there's a deck that can fit a Symbiote Spider-Man and this in it, just the threat of it is kind of nuts, right? You have to play around the fact that like my turn 6 could be Hobgoblin Galactus or whatever, right? Like you have to play around a whole bunch of stuff, and I already want to play Symbiote Spider-Man in those decks. So I think when you look at it in that context, I can see a lot of potential for a card like this, even though I think its best friends probably got hit pretty hard. I think that this card can do potentially multiple things. It can add an extra dimension to decks that might need that extra dimension. Like, the one thing that really strikes me about that 13 energy, though, is that you're going to need to figure out a way to, like, actually actively use it. A lot of decks don't have 13 energy worth of cards to play on the final turn of the game. And so if you're building for a deck that will have 13 energy worth of cards to play, well, what happens when you don't have 13 energy? The deck kind of sucks. So I'm not sure how to square that circle. Maybe there's something with generated cards that can do it. But mostly when I see this card, I see it's like Sarah with a lower floor and a pretty dramatically higher ceiling because of that combo.
Yeah, I mean, that whole 13 energy combo could just be the point of the deck. Like,
Yeah.
you know how people always like build decks. I mean, okay, not necessarily the same thing, but then if you reference like Shuri Nimrod, you know, like you stay when you get the thing, and then if you get snapped before you get the thing, you leave. Because like let's just say they snap you and you have the 4+5 in your hand, you just snap back and then you 13 energy on turn 6 and do whatever the hell you want, you know. But then obviously if they snap you and you don't have the thing, you leave. It's that kind of deck, you know. And I feel obviously this is more about like knowing how to snap and retreat, but that deck is viable if you know how to snap and retreat.
Let's talk about Frankie Raye. I don't expect this to be a long conversation. I think Frankie Raye, to me, reveals that there is a deep imbalance in the actual power of a 2-drop versus the utility a 2-drop can have. Like, when you look at Frankie Raye, she's saying, I can be a 2/6, maybe even bigger if you buff me, if you put effort into me, and then also play a 6-drop. And I think outside of the fact that it's hard to be a buff deck that wants to play a lot of 6-drops, you zoom in and it's asking you kind of a lot, and it's paying you off with like, okay, I'm Lizard, and sometimes if you put effort into me, I'll double the buffs, like a combo Lizard Sebastian Shaw. And when you describe it, it's like, that seems like a fine enough card, but then you compare it to something like Merlin, and it's like, this is not actually a serious consideration. You compare it to like Hood Misery, it's not a serious consideration. It just ends up falling short of the truly elite cards in the game in such a dramatic way that sort of makes it not unplayable, but it's like, why would you be doing this for your points package instead of something else? Like, it's not that far off. It's a fine card in the Mysterio decks, none of which are like incredibly bad, but like if you're going to play Mysterio, Mockingbird, Sasquatch, it's like a fine card to have in your deck. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just kind of asking a lot for what it's actually giving you. And I think that's a pretty easy recipe for a card that needs a little bit more help, especially as they seem to be willing to nerf stuff. But like, what really strikes me about this card is like, if they wanted it to be good, I kind of think they had to make it a 2/4. And I don't know what that says about the rest of the stuff in Marvel Snap, but I think this kind of had to be a 2/4.
Yeah, no, I mean, this straight up had to be a 2/4. Like, you're right. This conversation doesn't need to be that long, because I honestly, like, you've covered everything, and at the same time, I actually really have nothing to add, because I just want to say it's a mid card.
Yeah.
It's a mid card. It's a very, very mid card. Like, you know, sometimes you try and like think of things that could make this potentially better. Like, I just like look at the card and just like, I don't even want to play the card.
Yep.
I honestly
it pretty
don't.
much does one thing. It goes in a buff deck that plays 6-drops. There's really only one of those right now, and you could try other stuff, but it doesn't really make her better. And she's one of those cards where it's like, the more you invest in her, the less it's worth it, because it's like,
Exactly.
oh, cool. I am glad I doubled that, and now I get that card Shang-Chi'd, as opposed to like on a Mr. Sinister doing the same thing with a 2-drop that scales with buffs, not vulnerable to Shang-Chi. And it's like, oh, wow. All right. That's it doesn't even really compare favorably to Mr. Sinister. That can't be good. The Mr. Fantastic nerf has raised a lot of questions, most of them revolving around the intersection of Marvel Snap's admittedly mediocre economy and, if you will allow me to say this, very good gameplay. The large thing that I've seen a lot of, and this has been a thing that has gotten significant pushback in community spaces, because I think people have brains that have the ability to retain memories, is I see a lot of people saying they always do this about making a season pass card good and then nerfing it. And I gotta be honest, I don't think they always do this. I think that if you look at this current season pass card, Galactus First Steps, or the previous season pass card of Esme Cuckoo, they don't always do this, but it does happen at enough of the time that I don't blame people for being like, they always do this as sort of a colloquialism for it, right? I just think that I'm not sure what the alternative is. Because if you have a problematic card and you don't nerf it because people paid money for it, I feel like that's worse than any other alternative, right? Like, what is the actual solution to our season pass card is a little too strong, right? Similarly, like, what is a good solution to our season pass card is a little too weak, right? Should they have buffed Esme? Like, is Esme supposed to be a 3/5? Is that something they should have done? I don't really know. They did well with Captain Carter, but they didn't do it with Esme. They haven't done it with Galactus First Steps, who I think is like actually like fine, like a 6 out of 10 and not like a 0 out of 10 like people talk about him. But like, it is sort of weird that there is this instant jump to like, we're getting scammed, we're getting rug pulled. As someone on Twitter said, they sold us a lemon, right? And it's like, I kind of think that they just have to make the balanced decisions they have to make, right? Because people will complain about, oh, they nerfed a Series 3 card instead of the Series 5 card. But then when they actually nerf the Series 5 card, they complain about that because they got rug pulled. And it's like, I hate the way that a game interacts with the economy because it causes all of these negative interactions. Like this is normally like the place where I would be like mad at the people for thinking this. I'm not really mad at the people for thinking this. I just kind of think that like, there's no good solution under Marvel Snap's economy for when a card like this actually releases. And frankly, there's kind of no good solution in Marvel Snap's economy for when anything is imbalanced because they just simply don't do refunds the way other games might.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it's just about like the balance, right? Like, I feel like when people say things like this always happens, right, what they actually mean by always is equivalent to in recent memory and also sometime in my traumatic past. Like when Zabu was too good, and also in the last 5 times, like 4 of them were insane. So like that's what they meant by always. They meant like more often than not, you know. So that's what I meant by balance. So at the end of the day, if like it's an even amount of like decent cards to good OP cards, then people will like feel it less that the season pass is always a must buy. But you did mention clearly that like the whole Esme thing, right? And collectors, they're not overpowered, they're just fine. But obviously in recent memory and also in like the past, more often than not, season pass cards have been really, really good, you know, and been like the core of a meta for sure. So I think at the end of the day, it's not so much about a solution, but like at the end of the day, if it balances out that like some of the future season pass cards are like less good, and then people in recent memory will remember that like, oh, these recent season pass cards are not fantastic. They wouldn't say that like, oh, it's always busted, you know, and it always gets nerfed after I spend my money. It's just the balance. I don't know if we'll ever reach that point whereby we have an equal amount of very good and very bad, or like neutral options from season pass cards. That's not even our control. It's just like me making a statement saying that like always is not really always. It's just in recent memory.
Yeah, and I don't even know if it's true in recent memory, right? Like you talk about like, oh, they always do this. Like Iron Patriot's still quite a good card. Merlin is still quite a good card. Agamotto is still quite a good card. 2 of them didn't even get touched, right? Mr. Fantastic got nerfed to a pretty harsh degree. Like that card is notably worse. And I think that is the thing that really like sets people off is like, not that this card got worse at doing what it does, but that it no longer fills the role that it was acquired to fill. And like when you look at an Iron Patriot, that's still doing what it does, right? Like it's still doing the thing that it does. It's just slightly worse. This card is so much worse that it gets knocked out of its own role as generic 2-drop. And I kind of wonder, because I wonder if there's like an appeal question where like they want season passes to be generic or generically playable, or like less than Phoenix Force, right? Like not Phoenix Force, not Nimrod. And I think that is an interesting set of incentives to try to juggle, because it does mean when you miss high on one like this, you end up with a card that people are purchasing purely for the utility of, I can put this in 50% of my decks. And if you nerf it out of that status, it ends up being like it's not able to carry it on interest alone. Mr. Fantastic is actually a pretty boring card if he's not good. And I think that's where he went wrong as opposed to Merlin.
Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, it's not so much about something that I feel like you should maybe like get accustomed. Okay, I guess you should get accustomed to it. It's just whether you can or not, which is you need to understand that like in Marvel Snap, just the way they've been doing it for years already, which is if you buy something like a season pass or like you get a card for your tokens or whatsoever, and then it's so good, your deck just feels so good and so powerful. You just need to like naturally know it's not gonna be that way for too long, because Marvel Snap buffs and nerfs thing is like it's so frequent. So like if your deck just feels too great or like it's just like the best thing in the world right now, you know that it's not gonna stay that way for long. I think if you get into that mindset, everything feels a lot less bad. Not trying to say that like I'm supporting the fact that you buy stuff and it gets nerfed and then you are supposed to feel totally fine about that. But like, I think you need to get used to the fact that it will happen.
Speaking of, Invisible Woman First Steps got nerfed in a couple of indirect ways. Losing Mr. Fantastic at 2 was a pretty big blow to the deck, in my humble opinion. Like, that matters a ton. Havoc's scaling got cut off, which also matters a great deal. And I think one of the things that sticks out to me about Invisible Woman First Steps is it probably doesn't end up being nearly as much of a combo deck as it previously was. Its point output loss here, with the loss of Mr. Fantastic as a sort of wheel greaser and of Havoc as a sort of peak scaler, it was notable to me when I played the deck. I'm not going to sit here and act like this is suddenly going to be magically bad, but it did feel like, man, I didn't expect them to be this harsh on the card that immediately, and it kind of makes me wonder about like where their warning bells were with the end of turn archetype to begin with. All of that is to say, though, there is one change they made that I think didn't hurt Invisible Woman First Steps at all, and that's the creation of Ghost as a new anti-end of turn tech card. That card does not do anything in the matchup. Like, I realize I'm overstating it. Obviously, it does things, but I don't think it's a fruitful thing to put in your deck if you're trying to beat the end of turn deck. I don't think the card that says turn off the end of turns is actually the tech card you want to be playing against those matchups. And I think that's a really fascinating note. Like, it might be if they get more small ball, but because so much of that deck is playing those cards late in the game, it manages to throw priority meaningfully well, which means that the things you actually want to do to punish it are things that want you to have priority, like Juggernaut and Negasonic. Those are what punish a final turn Havoc Thena, right? Not a Ghost. And I think that like that is a really interesting note where it's like, I feel like a lot of people were crying out for, we need a tech card for this. And I don't actually think that the tech card we have for this is even close to very good in the matchup against it. And I just wanted to get that out there because I kind of expect people to look at the performance of Invisible Woman First Steps and chalk it up to Ghost. And I just want to like sort of pre-correct the record on that.
Yeah, I don't believe that the Ghost itself is going to be really effective as well. I mean, Invisible Woman First Steps is very interesting because like the card itself is the same, right? But it's just the supporting actors, or maybe she's the supporting actor and they are the stars, or whatever you want to call it. But like the stars revolving around her are a lot less bright right now. Yeah, let's put it that way. And that also obviously affects her very strongly. The like you said, the deck is definitely still playable for sure. It's just that you do feel the difference, right? It's like certain decks when you take a point off or you change the interaction a little bit. It's like just maybe a 2 or 3 point drop overall, or whatever. But you feel the overall weight of it because this deck was probably winning games by this margin, by that margin for a long time. And now the margin is gone, the margin is decreased, and then it doesn't win set matchup as often as well because that archetype didn't change. Your margin decreased, and then you don't win it as often. So I think what we're trying to say here is that like deck is still fine, IWFS is still fine. It's just that it wins the matchups they used to do by smaller margins.
One thing that I've been noticing a lot, and this is across card games, but I think it's relevant to Marvel Snap, is that in the immediate aftermath of nerfs, people go back to things that they know were safe. But also, I think they're correctly doing that a lot of the time. Like, while people are trying to figure out what the hell is actually the top tier, it's really, really easy to play like a tier 1.5 deck that is still fully figured out. But something that keeps happening as we do these nerfs is like, something cool will come out, a new sort of synergy deck will evolve, it will take over the meta, it will get nerfed, and then we will go back to what we were playing before that synergy deck came out. And then something else cool will come out, and it'll be a cool synergy deck, and then it'll get nerfed, and we'll go back to what we were playing before that synergy deck came out. And what I specifically want to point to here is like Cannonball Mercury Fenris Wolf stuff, where it's like, oh, okay, well, this Fenris Wolf package is pretty good. It's pretty damn solid. It's really good. Victoria Hand is another deck in this space where it's like, this is just a really good thing to be doing. And then, maybe it gets supplanted over time by something like Thanos or Thanos Arishem or Invisible Woman. And as those decks get figured out, they're naturally like more intricate and harder to figure out. So like as those decks evolve, they end up sort of passing it on the power curve, so to speak. And then those decks get nerfed and we go back to doing that stuff. And it's just like, these decks are never offensively good enough to seemingly get nerfed. They are always consistently around at like a 51 to 53% win rate or whatever. And because of that, they constantly dodge nerfs because they're never actually the thing that stands out at any specific moment. But every time a new deck comes out, is really good and better than them and gets nerfed, we end up going back to them anyway because they're just like these constant second placers. And that dynamic is something I hadn't really appreciated before.
I mean, is that really a good thing? Because
no.
So here's my take, right? Like, if every time, like you said, if every time something new comes out, which will happen, and then eventually one of it becomes really good, and then it gets really nerfed because that's how the cycle goes in Marvel Snap. You regress, right? You regress back to the decks that you knew are all reliable, like you said. But the point you brought up was really important, really good, which is they just are good but not good enough to ever get nerfed, because if you nerf them, they become unplayable. Like, these decks are the kinds of decks whereby you nerf them, they are just gone, but they are never good enough to be actually nerfed. So they're just there, and they will always disappear once the new good thing appears, and then the new good thing gets nerfed, and then you go back to them again. So it's like all reliable, but the thing is, the reliable will stay reliable forever if this is always the case, right? You only nerf the things that come out that are new and sparkly and whatever. So how do we solve this? No actual idea. Is the way to buff so many things from the past such that when you eventually nerf the new stuff, the old things from the past are playable, but it's not the like standard reliable stuff. It's just the newly buffed old things.
Yes.
But in order to do that, you need to. It's like, it has to be okay. So like another game that I play, they call it the shotgun patch, which is basically what it does is that there are new things that came out, got nerfed, but in order to keep the game fresh, they buffed 69. No joke, legitimately, they buffed 69 old cards. Like, that crazy. Yeah, all at one shot after they nerfed the new thing. Marvel Snap could do that, by the way.
Yeah. This also raises another awkward question, because one of the things that's really struck me is that, like, one of the things I want to see Marvel Snap do is invest more power in decks that have meaningful identities. And I think they've done a good deal of that, right? Like, if you look at Agamotto or you look at Invisible Woman First Steps, they were clearly if you look at these cards, they were clearly looking at them like, this could be a new archetype. We want it to be good. We don't want to release a new archetype that sucks, right? Like, that does that. We might as well not even make the new archetype if it's just going to suck. And I think that runs into their normal balanced strategy of like, we have to bring this stuff down to earth, because if you keep making people feel like, oh, we've made this new archetype, it's really awesome, but trust us, in 4 weeks, we're going to release a card that counters it, right? Like,
or nerf it to the ground anyway.
Right. It's like, it sort of makes it like, what is the point of investing in a new archetype? Why don't I just go invest in like good cards, piles, silver, metal, right? Like, why don't I just go invest in the stuff that I know is not going to get nerfed, because I'm just going to be playing that for a full freaking year. I'm going to be playing the same Victoria Hand deck for a year, and for some reason you're going to buff Misery. I haven't figured that one out yet. Like, I just don't. I think it sort of creates really awkward incentives, and I kind of wish what they would do is just be willing to live with these decks that have identities being better. Like Dormammu. They buffed Dormammu, and when they buffed Dormammu, they took him from 11 power to 10 power. Why? What possible balance concern was there where it was like, oh man, I'm worried Dormammu is going to be too strong? If Dormammu is too strong and I'm in the balance team, my answer is good. That's awesome. I think that is super cool that this new cool archetype that ties back in to the coolest characters in Marvel Snap, Deadpool and Wolverine, Venom, all of them. I think I would push that. Like, I kind of feel like they're leaving money on the table by not balancing Dormammu even higher. It's like, I don't love the idea that these archetypes of consistent BS are always just sub nerf level, while these archetypes of like that are actually like objectively speaking, it's so cool that an Invisible Woman First Steps end of turn deck is a real thing. They made a deck which is like half the Fantastic Four are in it, maybe 3/4 of them, depending on how you feel about Thing First Steps. I know Safety Blade was doing that, right? And instead, we're just going back to Juggernaut piles because they nerfed the other stuff, right? Like, we're going back to Victoria Hand. We're going back to Fenris Wolf Shang-Chi. And it's just like, I don't know. That like I would prefer if they gave these cards a longer leash. And I feel like that's something I'm going to take into my evaluation of a card coming up next month, which is called Jocasta. Jocasta is a 3/3. You play her. She triggers all the activate abilities that you have without using their activates. And it's like, so that's strong. A new card where it's like, that looks strong. That looks awesome. Really, really cool. I hope you guys don't kill it. Like, this is a cool new archetype. Please don't kill it.
Yeah, I mean, that card specifically should, in theory, enable a whole new kind of deck type, right? Yes. Like, once people find the most busted activate interaction, that's the deck. Yeah, but that will be for like the next for then, which is cool. Obviously, new deck type. But yeah, I really think so. I'm going back to my whole buff 69 cards thing again. Like, that's actually one way to do it though. The Marvel do Marvel Snap 2.0, right? Because if you're gonna keep like nerfing new stuff, which I think might be inevitable, right? If the new stuff that comes out gets nerfed, why not just buff a crap ton of old things and let everybody figure it out? You know, because because the cool thing about buffing a crap ton of old cards is everybody has them already. You realize that this is the best part. Like okay, again, buff Punisher. Like, I say buff Punisher every month, but like I just love the card. I love the character. But anyway, like, if you buff 69 old cards, everyone already has them, right? Like, let people figure out. It's like you get 69 new cards, but it's not exactly new. They already have them because they already did invest time in the game. But those cards get better. Everybody's gonna be happy about that, right? Because it's not like people be upset like, oh, I spent so much on these new cards and they get nerfed. These are cards you already have, and if they get buffed, you just go figure out if they are like worth playing. Now, you know, after they got buffed. So that's my suggestion. And obviously, it does tie into the whole identities thing as well, because like some of these deck archetypes in the game right now, they don't do anything. Like, some of the identities in this game are so bad. I mean, like, there's nothing wrong with the identity. It's just that the archetype doesn't do anything, you know?
I think we need to launch Juggernaut into the sun. Lamby disagrees, and so I want to give him a platform. I've been spending a lot of time on my own soapbox talking about how much this card needs to be fired into the vacuum of space. Lamby, I want you to tell me why Juggernaut should stay here on Earth and why he's actually okay.
Okay, so first disclaimer, it's a good card. I 100% agree. Juggernaut is a good card as long as you're not in a meta where the board is fully filled, aka Thanos meta, which is my favorite meta. But anyway, so as long as you're not in a meta where the board is just fully filled and Juggernaut bounces stuff nowhere, it's gonna be a relevant card. It's like a turn 6 game ender. See, I'm saying the good stuff first, okay? I'm saying the good stuff first. It's like a turn 6 game ender. There is inevitability. People love setting up inevitability, right? But here's the pitch. Here's the thing. I don't think it's as inevitable as pre-nerf Professor X. I use that as the reference. Like, I really think, I really think this is a card that is beatable. I still think it's a beatable card simply because you can, if you know that your opponent is setting up to win the game with this thing, you can set up to not lose to this thing. You know, like, it's about stat allocation in the right spots. Like, you know that the Juggernaut is only going to be really good if it's like it wins the lane just because they play it on turn 6, you know, that kind of thing. You can set up to beat that. The reason why I used Professor X pre-nerf as something that was really very toxic was because all you needed to do with Professor X pre-nerf, all you needed to do was just play high statted cards that are low costed. This card's a bit different. Juggernaut, I think, actually has way more play around than something like Professor X in the past. So I do think it's a good card. You will still lose games to it if your opponent just like curves perfectly or whatsoever. But it's not something that should be gone from the game, I really feel. I really feel that this card, like, it's a good game ender card. I think it's a good card that can end games, but I don't think it's like necessarily okay, it's good. It's not broken. I think it's just a good card. Yeah,
I'll make the counter argument.
Okay, take a point off it. Okay, take a point off it. Fine, just take a point off it. Whatever. That's what they do anyway, right?
I don't think 3-2 does a goddamn thing. If they 3-2 this guy instead of like raising his cost, I will be pretty disappointed. What I will say,
exactly what I'm trying to say.
What I will say is, I think that the ways to play around this card are so inefficient against any normal Marvel Snap play that they might as well not exist, right? Like,
okay,
what is my way of playing around Juggernaut? It's I fill up this lane and I basically say I'm winning either of the other two. And that requires
Okay, wait, I need to stop you right there right now because filling up a lane early. Okay, this is my pitch. Okay, I am someone that when I was like super hyper competitive in this game, I always advocated if you know they can never beat this point output, fill it up ASAP because then they know that the lane is unbeatable, and then like any points that they've already committed there are just lost points. You know, it's a high skill cap thing whereby like I have intentionally clocked myself on turn 4 and said done. That's the max in that lane. You are not beating, and even if you are, you're not beating the other two. Obviously, that's a skill thing, but maybe that's why I don't think Juggernaut is a problem because I'm very actively knowing that I can put this much in this lane and it's enough. But that's
I think that makes sense. It's just also like the counterplay to do that is so unintuitive that what it's asking of you is to play the game completely differently because it exists. And I think that is reasonable. Like, it's not like that's disqualifying on its own. But the fact that it can be paired with other big number cards, the fact that it is so cheap and able to do that, and that it is also a sort of like, you know, it's an anti, oh, well, I have priority, you can't Shang-Chi my stuff because of the fear of the Juggernaut, right? Like, the ways in which you have to change your play because of a 3 mana card, I think are above and beyond what should be allowed on a 3 mana card, effectively. Where it's like, if this card existed at 5 or even at 4, I don't necessarily think I have the problem.
Mobius at 3? You get what I mean?
No, that's more about like just snap and retreats, right? Like the Juggernaut being turn 6 gives him additional value in ways that I think are sort of very difficult to quantify, but I think we both know exist, right? Like Mobius is snap and retreat. If you can't play a Mobius on turn 6 and expect it to do a goddamn thing unless there's a turn 7, right? Juggernaut does this on the turn where cubes double, and I think that gives him like an additional like, oh man, that's a little bit much.
Okay.
That's my argument. I wanted to give a little KMBest accountability update. I've been talking a lot about my journey to become like a more positive force in the community. A couple of things that I've been doing. I've continued my little donation stream, even though I am not really as mad at the season pass as I was about Kid Omega. I've just continued doing it. It made me feel good. I haven't been able to start GGing my opponents. It started driving me insane again. So I'm muting everyone again. I'm sorry. I tried. It didn't work. But what I have done is try to actively be more of a fun streamer, trying to get onto what I would describe as my Dara mindset of just like, I'm going to play this stuff. It's going to be fun. It's going to be entertaining. And if I crash out, my goal is to make that entertaining too. I want you to be able to be like, look at this crash out, LMAO, as opposed to like actually feeling bad about it. That's something I've been working for. If I can't stop the crash outs, which I do feel like I've gotten better on, the very least I can do is like clip them up and put them as a YouTube compilation or something like that. Seems like I can at least laugh at myself. And that is like, I think, a bit of growth. But that has come with something else, which is on Mondays now. Normally I didn't stream on Mondays. I've introduced mid-deck Mondays, which is explicitly I'm playing stuff I think is sub-meta just to see if there's anything out there that I haven't really noticed as a sort of filthy meta net deck kind of guy. So I wanted to mention that little KMBest accountability. That's where I'm coming from right now. Mid-deck Mondays, if you want to check that out. I'll be playing mid-decks and then getting mad at the fact that I played mid-decks probably. But I did do one last Monday. It was fairly fruitful. It resulted in the video that we did that came out last Tuesday. So I hope you enjoy the fruits of my labor in that sense.
Yeah. Actually, I think the fact that you brought this thing up is very cool, and it definitely shows growth as like person or competitor or like just someone in general. Because like personally for me as well, because I've been competing my whole. I feel like sharing this now is perfect as well because me competing my whole life since I was like a kid in sports, esports, whatsoever. Managing like people GGing you and stuff like that is very real, by the way. It's like it comes up so often, especially if your goal is to win and if you are invested in the game and you care about the game. It's kind of impossible not to get upset. I feel like people that tell you don't get upset don't get it because it's impossible, right? Because you are invested in the game, you put time into the game. When things don't go your way, you for sure get upset. I think at the end of the day, it's about compartmentalizing it and knowing that even if you get upset, which is like 100% normal, you don't let it affect the outcome or the current state. So like using sarcasm or like turning the potential crash out into a meme to cope, I think it's good cope. It's like a good way of coping. I feel like instead of just exploding and then making everyone leave. So I feel like there's good and bad ways of coping, and I think like the whole like glorifying the misfortune is actually quite a good way of coping because sarcasm helps.
Yeah. And with that, it's time to end. Thank you so much for watching. I've been KMBest. He's been Lamby Series. Remember, you can find us on YouTube and Spotify. Check us out on either platform. And he is going to take us out.
All right, everyone. Hope you like and enjoy this episode. Like, comment, and subscribe, and we will see you guys in the next one. Bye-bye.